Hi, I'm Ray from PhoneArena, and this is our comparison between the Sony Xperia Z1 and the Apple iPhone 5. Sony hasn't been having the time of its life in the wireless industry lately, as the company has faced some stiff competition from rival Android phone makers such as Samsung and HTC. However, we finally reached a moment when the Japanese company has finally managed to catch up, at least technologically. With its most recent flagship, the Xperia Z1, Sony can rival all of the high-end Android smartphones out there. But what about the iPhone 5? How does the Z1 stack up against the iOS 7 and Apple's former flagship? Let's see if the bigger size and newer internals will help the Sony Xperia Z1 deliver a better experience than the iPhone 5. Luckily, what we're dealing with here are two well-made smartphones with classy and sturdy designs. Both feel quite solid in the hand, with the iPhone 5 making generous use of both glass and metal for its casing, while the Xperia Z1 sticks with glass for the front and back panels, combined with a nice aluminum frame. It will be up to you to decide which one you like more, but in our opinion the iPhone 5 has an edge in the looks department or the Z1's slightly more ordinary visuals. There is a huge difference in terms of dimensions. The Sony Xperia Z1 is among the biggest phones with 5-inch displays currently available. In comparison, the Apple iPhone 5 is way more compact with its dimensions, making it much more comfortable to hold and use. The same thing goes for their weight, as the Xperia Z1 weighs the impressive 6 ounce versus the much lighter 3.95 ounce of the iPhone 5. The power lock key, volume buttons and camera shutter of the Xperia Z1 aren't bad, but the power lock and volume keys of the iPhone 5 are better. With a more pronounced and clicky movement, using those keys on the iPhone 5 feels more satisfying. Obviously, it's the screen size that sets these two devices apart the most. With its massive 6-inch TFT LCD screen, the Xperia Z1 simply dwarfs the iPhone 5's 4-inch IPS LCD one. In terms of resolution, the Xperia Z1 sports the now standard Android flagship resolution of 1080 by 1920 pixel, resulting in a sky-high pixel density of 441 ppi. Everything is extremely fine and clear on the Z1's display, and you'll never notice even a hint of pixelization. With the iPhone 5, we are treated to a resolution of 640 by 1136 pixels, and while this doesn't seem so impressive on paper, pixel density stands at the satisfying 326 ppi, which means that the iPhone 5's display is also great as far as legibility goes. Sure, it's not as perfectly clean as that of the Z1, but it won't cause you any discomfort in that respect. As we mentioned in the beginning of this section, the Xperia Z1 doesn't utilize the popular IPS LCD technology and instead goes for a TFT screen powered by Sony's so-called triluminous tech. The Z1's average color temperature of about 7000 Kelvin is slightly better than the iPhone 5's 7300 Kelvin, as the reference point is considered to be about 6500 Kelvin. However, Apple has managed to get the gamma right with the iPhone 5. All the different levels from very dark to very bright are just as bright as they should be, while the same cannot be said about the Z1, where the highlights tend to appear a bit brighter than they should, potentially causing a bit of lost detail. The Xperia Z1 sports a more than decent maximum brightness output of 495 nits, so outdoor visibility is very good. The iPhone 5, though, can get slightly brighter at about 535 nits, which helps it achieve a slightly easier to view image when outdoors. On one hand, there is the Xperia Z1 with its customized Android 4.2.2 experience, while on the other we have the iPhone 5 and its new iOS 7 reality. There is nothing particularly new about Sony's UI for the most part. Things follow the normal way of operation for Android. You have a number of home screen pages where you can place various app shortcuts, widgets and folders, while the main menu gives you access to all of your apps. Sony's personalization hasn't missed all the core OS apps such as the phone book, calendar and so on, giving them a more unified look that suits the rest of the UI. On the iPhone 5, the brand new iOS 7 stays true to the roots of iOS, meaning that everything happens in almost exactly the same way as before. Aside from the light and flat new look of the operating system, users can now take advantage of the new Control Center feature that provides quick access to frequently used settings such as the toggles for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, as well as brightness and some others. Overall, we want to say that we love the new iOS appearance, but it's okay and it gives the system the much needed refresh. Being a new high-end Android smartphone, the Z1 is equipped with one of the best pieces of silicon available, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 SoC, which offers a quad-core 2.2 GHz Crate 400 CPU and the Adreno 330 GPU. Meanwhile, the iPhone 5 is powered by the Apple A6 chipset. On paper, this system chip seems much humbler, as it only features a dual-core 1.3 GHz Swift CPU, along with the PowerVR SGX 543 MP3 GPU. As far as user experience goes, however, both handsets run perfectly smoothly, though the iPhone 5 is noticeably snappier in some apps, such as the browser, in terms of response time. Third-party apps and games are also running perfectly well on both devices. It's worth noting that the Xperia Z1 has to feed a significantly power-hungrier screen, so the extra horsepower of the Snapdragon 800 chipset isn't going to waste. When it comes to system memory, the iPhone 5 has 1 GB of RAM, while the Xperia Z1 ups that to 2 GB. Internal storage on the Xperia Z1 is 16 GB only, but thankfully, if you need more, you can always install a microSD card. Things are a bit different on the iPhone 5, where you don't get the option to install a microSD card, but you can purchase the device with 16, 32 or 64 GB of internal storage. The default browser on the Xperia Z1 is Google's Chrome, while what you'll find on the iPhone 5 is Safari. Both browsers work very quickly and fluidly, though the lightning-quick response of the Safari browser remains unsurpassed to this day. Both handsets feature LTE connectivity, but in theory, the Xperia Z1 can achieve faster speeds with its LTE Category 4 downlink of up to 150 megabits per second, versus the iPhone 5's LTE Category 3 downlink of up to 100 megabits per second. Of course, HSPA Plus is there for those users who don't have access to LTE yet. Both the iPhone 5 and the Xperia Z1 feature spectacular cameras, but the more advanced tech of the so-called G-Lens shooter utilized by Sony's product does have the upper hand overall. For example, the 20.7 megapixel sensor of the Z1 has a wide aperture of f2.0 compared to the iPhone 5's 8 megapixel camera with aperture of f2.4. Both feature backside illuminated sensors, but the one of the Z1 has a bigger size of 1/2.3 inches, which allows the pixels of the 20.7 megapixel camera to have a decent size despite their great number. The iPhone 5 sensor size, on the other hand, measures 1/3.2 inches, which basically means that it's smaller in size. Basically, when it comes to cameras, you want your sensor to be as big as possible. The Xperia Z1's G-Lens camera takes amazing pictures when it comes to details. With its respectable 20.7 megapixels, there's noticeably more data in the Z1's picture if you zoom in and start observing the fine details. If you're mostly looking at pictures in a web-friendly size, for example in Facebook, there won't be such a noticeable difference in this regard. But anyway, the fact is that the Z1 can take larger images. Even though the pictures from the iPhone 5 look very pleasing, it's obvious that Apple's handset tends to boost the contrast and color saturation a bit in order to produce those fancy results. On the other hand, the color reproduction on the Z1's photographs is more natural and true to life, which is what we prefer seeing. It's worth noting, however, that the Z1 doesn't always get the exposure right, resulting in some overexposed areas at times. For some reason, indoor images taken with the iPhone 5 are much brighter compared to those of the Xperia Z1, and surprisingly, this hasn't caused a bigger amount of noise. Actually, indoor images from both phones feature an equal amount of noise, and at this point, it's obvious that we would prefer the iPhone 5 when it comes to indoor pictures because of their superior brightness and vividness. 1080p video recording is pretty good with both phones, though not groundbreaking. Details are way above average with both, probably with a slight advantage for the iPhone 5. Colors are once again a bit more vivid with Apple's handset, but not to the point where they would appear unnatural. While the iPhone 5 sports a brilliant 4-inch display with 16:9 aspect ratio that's ideal for video playback, the Xperia Z1 offers a more suitable screen for the purpose. Thanks to its massive size of 5 inches, watching video and enjoying various other types of multimedia, including games, will be a lot more comfortable and fun on the Xperia Z1. When it comes to call quality, the Xperia Z1 manages to deliver an acceptable performance, although it's by no means exceptional with its OK loudness and average sound quality. The iPhone 5 is a whole other story, as its earpiece is on the stronger side, plus voices tend to sound a bit fuller when conversing using Apple's handset. Thanks to its beefier battery of 3000 mAh, the Z1 can theoretically last longer than the iPhone 5 and its tinier 1440 mAh battery. Having run our own battery test, which is designed to replicate typical real-life usage, we've noticed that the Xperia Z1 does manage to last a bit longer, though the difference isn't as great as the statistics from the manufacturers suggest. The Z1 lasted for about 4 hours and 40 minutes, while the iPhone 5 powered itself off after about 4 hours and 20 minutes. So the bigger battery unit of the Z1 allows it to achieve a respectable result in our battery test, but the lower energy consumption of the iPhone 5's smaller screen helps it to remain close to its opponent despite its significantly smaller battery. There is no denying that the iPhone 5 has lost some of its appeal. After all, the handset has been around for a year now, and it's only expected that new high-end smartphones will be able to offer better tech. Such is the case with the G-Lens camera of the Xperia Z1, for example. However, the iPhone 5 does hold up surprisingly well after all this time. The device is just as snappy, if not even faster than the Xperia Z1, all the while offering a premium design and a great screen, as well as better call quality and speaker. However, if 4-inch screens are starting to feel a bit small to you, then it's obviously time for you to move on and consider an Android flagship such as the Xperia Z1. It will offer you a great design, a large 5-inch 1080p display and great performance, courtesy of the state-of-the-art Snapdragon 800 chipset. Still, there is one thing that you should definitely not overlook, and this is the bulkiness of the Xperia Z1. As highly functional and good-looking as the Z1 can be, it's actually among the biggest handsets in its class. So, if that's an issue for you, you should definitely consider getting the Galaxy S4, HTC One or G2 instead, which are all great alternatives. Thank you for watching our video comparison between the Sony Xperia Z1 and Apple iPhone 5. If you'd like to learn more about these two, visit us at PhoneArena.com.